Welcome to another episode of Conversations with the Headmaster, featuring our head, Mr. Shane Kidwell. In our third episode, we sit down with Mr. Malcolm Dunkeld, our resident journey and outdoor expert, speaking about all the ways that nature builds resilience, leadership, and teamwork in our boys. Stay tuned.
Good afternoon, everybody. I've got with me this afternoon Malcolm Dunkeld. Malcolm has recently joined St Albans as a house director, but also has a passion for outdoor education and has been involved in this for a number of years at a number of different schools. And it's wonderful to welcome you to St Albans, Malcolm. And I'd love to be able to talk to you about house mastering and the challenges you're facing in that area of our school. But this podcast is really for our Form 3 parents, particularly around our Form 3 journey and why we do this and why it's so important to the college and to the boys, and particularly the boys who've done it. So perhaps we want to start just by you telling us a little bit about why you think outdoor education is important for boys, and maybe you want to specifically reference the journey.
Yeah, thanks, Shane. Thanks for the opportunity. I think I'm excited for this year and excited for the journey. I think it's a complex sort of question because the experience is going to talk to boys in many different ways. Every boy is different. But I think it's critical that we are taking our boys into an outdoor environment, taking them to a place where they're not as comfortable as normal, because that's when we can, really work on that character development and growth. When they're in the comfort zone, it's very difficult to develop them. But if we take them outside there, I think that's when we really can get an effect on them. I also think we have a responsibility. We've got a beautiful country, and we need to show our boys that. And something like the journey really does expose them to some unique parts of South Africa.
Absolutely.
I
think, our journey started 21 years ago. And it was a huge undertaking then. And we employed somebody to research and to figure out what route we would take. But even before we started looking at that, we started to ask ourselves why we would want to do something like this. And I think in many, many ways, boys need a challenge, and they need a space as well to start reflecting on themselves and their behavior and their actions. And they need to start thinking about the young man they want to become, and ultimately, the man they want to become, and what that means for them. And I suppose the journey, was not just a physical journey. It was established because we know that it affects the emotions of boys, and it affects the psychology behind why boys should be out in the country and doing things that perhaps are difficult and not necessarily easy. So perhaps you want to start by telling us, we decided 21 years ago that the journey should be 23 days long. Why do you think it should be 23 days or in and around that amount of time?
Yeah, I think just to add to what you've just said, today's society, we don't have time. Everything's rushed and busy, and because of the devices and our connectivity, the boys are never at a time when they're just idly sitting and thinking. And I think that's one of the reasons why journey needs to be so long, to give them that opportunity and almost train them to do so, because they don't ever do that in normal society. So it's uncomfortable and it's difficult for them to just sit and think and reflect. And yet that's so critical in one's development. So the length of journey obviously provides opportunity for that, and the boys slowly build up, and eventually they really enjoy the longer periods of time where they can just sit by themselves and reflect. But that's one of many reasons. I think a boy can master emotions, they can master who they are for a week, for 10, for even 12 days, but eventually they're gonna be exposed and they're gonna show their raw emotion. So it has to be long enough. Otherwise, we're not really gonna get to see the boy as we want to. Relationships take time, and one of the huge benefits of Journey is the mentorship relationship that builds between the teacher and the boy, as well as between the boys and the other boys in the group. And if it's too short, it's going to sort of form, and they'll depart before the relationship has really been cemented. So I think that's critical. A lot of boys will start Journey and they'll just be in survival mode, and if the event is too short, they stay in survival mode and exit in survival mode, and they never reach. We talk about surviving, and then thriving. And if they never get to reach that thriving stage, then they're not going to get the development opportunities out of it, because they're just going to be in survival mode. But if it's pushed long enough, they have to reach the point where they start thriving, and that's when we can really develop character within the boys.
Absolutely.
And I think it has to be said that the Journey has become a rite of passage, and every boy that's come through St Albans in the last 20 years has done 23 days of Journey, and I think that ownership needs to be there, and the boys, the Form 4s and 5s will want to see the next group achieve the same length journey. So it's critical.
And the start and the finish have been the same for those 21 years, and many of the much of the route is still very, very similar. But I want to come back to just something you and I touched on about reflection. And boys just not, because of the busyness of the world we live in, we never just stop and think about things. And I've received, I'm sure you over your time as well, boys write a letter to their parents, to loved ones, and loved ones write back to them, but teachers write to them. I have the privilege of receiving a letter from each boy on his solo, and I take the time to write back to them. But, I think in the moment, in the 23 days, that's one type of reflection. But I've received a letter from a boy 18 years later, after having written him a letter, reflecting on some of the things that he took a photo of the letter and sent it back to me and highlighted a couple of things I had said to him. And he says he's hung on to some of those things now 18 years later into his life. And I think we underestimate the value of reflection. We underestimate the value of a significant period of time with other boys and friends, but also with that mentor that you spoke about. That can have a huge impact in your life going forward. Do you want to comment on that at all?
Yeah, I think I've seen it also in other events that I've been involved in, that those letters carry a huge amount of value and power. And I think, again, with the way society operates now, we constantly are just getting fed information and we never stop and absorb it. And I think that's exactly that time to reflect and the boys to journal and write things down, that's going to be how they can actually develop those characteristics that we want to develop in them, because they are able to see and reflect on it. So it is critical.
Yeah. Events like this are always risky. And I suppose in many, many ways, life is risky. All sorts of things could happen to you just walking down, the school path, let alone the journey path. But, you've done an incredible amount of planning already for our journey now in November. And maybe you want to share a little bit about, some of that planning and what it takes to put an event like this together. And then maybe we can also just talk a little bit about, the safety of doing an event like this and what we do as a school to mitigate any incidents that may happen.
Yeah, sure. I think, risk and adversity is is a reality. It's a reality in life. And again, if you look at the benefit of putting the boys in a situation that carries risks and teaching them how to manage those risks, I think probably if you did a study, all the best business people in the world would be risk takers. That's how they've become successful. So avoiding risk isn't going to help. We can never prepare the road for our boys, but we can certainly prepare the boys for the road. So we have to put these situations in front of them that challenges them in that sense. I always like to say with any event that I run is, I'm a parent myself, and I will always use that as a yardstick. Am I prepared to send my child on this event? And if not, then I'm going to do something to make it safer. But to answer your question, we're going to look at every single risk on the event. We've got a professional company that's going to be running our risk assessments, and we're going to be working alongside them, developing the risk assessment as well as standard operating procedures to ensure that safety is on the very best level. We look at both local and international safety standards, and make sure that we align with them. Risk, as I said, risk is critically important, and we'll look at each risk. We'll decide if we're going to accept the risk as it is, or if we're going to remove the risk, or if we're just going to look to reduce or transfer it. And that's basically the policy we'll apply to each aspect of journey. And
while boys are out there, they're going to have to make decisions themselves as well. But we're never going to be putting them in a space where the risk is to the extent where it's going to do extreme harm. And so, but the important part here is that boys have to also be part of the process of making the decisions. So, for instance, let's be practical for a minute. Boys get maps. They have to navigate their way around a particular area. And, some of that area could be dangerous terrain. The rest of the area, that has been planned would be navigable and easily navigated, but, in terms of getting to your destination. So what is the role of the staff member in that? I mean, if boys wanted to suddenly go down a cliff, what's the role of the staff member in terms of mitigating risk?
Yeah, so I think as you were asking that question, I just, shepherd came into my mind, and that's exactly what the staff member is. Look, we have a school teacher there that's responsible pastorally for the boys, and then we also employ adventure guides to go with each group, which is a trained professional, a guide that's kind of knows that environment, knows all the navigational, knows all safety procedures, and their primary responsibility is the safety of the boys. They constantly are going to be analyzing risks as you go through, and looking to make judgment calls like that. But then along with that, we've got an educator who understands boys, who works with them on a daily basis, and the combination, I think, will always fulfill that shepherding role, and make sure the boys don't go off the path over the cliff where they shouldn't.
Yeah, and I think our safety record speaks for itself. I think boys sometimes get themselves in spaces that where they really don't want to be on journey, and so I suppose in a sense self-destruct. I mean, what are our protocols when a boy just decides he's going to make it difficult for himself to continue the journey?
Yeah, I think each situation is obviously different, and it gets handled on its merits. I almost want to say, if a boy gets in that space and is able to get through it, the journey is going to be so much more valuable for him. And I think it's a privilege when we've had successes in the past where we've seen boys that have got into a point where they really, are ready to throw in the towel. And then through the support structures that we have in place, we've been able to get them proverbially back on the horse, although physically also on journey, and get them through. But I think, as I said, each situation is different. We've got a fantastic medical team, as well as the guides, as well as the teachers, and we'll assess the situation. And if we feel the situation is going to be harmful to the child, then we'll make a call on that, and we'll always consider the child's safety and the child's emotional safety as the number one priority.
Yeah, I think again of some of the letters that have been written to me. I think a lot of boys who write letters to me often say, I didn't think I would be able to get through a particular day, or whether it be a cycle day or a mountain climbing day or whatever it is. But for some reason, I did. And so suddenly the realization that I can conquer some of my fears, and I've got something within me that I didn't realize I actually had. I think that in many ways, just that realization that you have within your capabilities more than you can imagine before you started the journey, I think is empowering in itself. Yeah. So let's shift a little bit. I mean, boys, today's society, what do we do on journey? We swim, we walk, we cycle, we horseback, we paddle. I mean, all of these things, some boys would never have perhaps been involved in any of these things. And maybe some boys, are going to be listening to this podcast thinking, goodness, I can't even cycle. Or I haven't cycled more than 1 kilometer in my life, I mean, how can boys start to prepare for journey, and what are we doing to help them?
Yeah, so we have a number of... Look, we're going to train the boys on the critical skills that they need for journey. Because there's many boys who that sort of environment is very uncomfortable for them. What's great about journey is there's other boys that are very comfortable, and the shared experience when you put them all in one group, and the learning opportunity is wonderful. But as a school, we cover a number of areas, safety, first aid, cooking on stoves, pitching tents, all those sort of very practical things we cover in training sessions. Particularly in the third term, there's one kind of bit of an experience coming up now in the second term. And so we support and we prepare the boys like that. They also have to take ownership. Journey is going to be a far more enjoyable experience if they are fitter. And not just fitness, I think getting on a bike and riding, because that's the reality. If they're not riding bike, they need to train that part. Hiking, and I always try to emphasize the need to actually hike with a backpack. Going for jogs will get you fit, but your feet need to get used to carrying that extra weight, that they, and so the boys need to actually put backpacks on and go and do hikes. And often you hear lovely stories of boys with their dads or their moms going out for hikes on Saturday and Sunday afternoons, and that's to me a huge benefit in terms of the overall community value of journey. So I think the boys have a responsibility to train and get themselves fit, but also we as a school, we certainly cover what's needed in terms of preparing them. And the other thing is also what they have done on the Form 1 and 2 hikes leading up to journey, where they've had a number of experiences that'll benefit them when they're out on journey.
Yeah, so boys, I think, need to take initiative, take ownership, take responsibility for preparing themselves for this event. Malcolm, some parents are not necessarily campers or hikers. I think sort of outdoor pursuits is perhaps on the decline in a sense. I mean, what would you say to parents who perhaps have never done this themselves and have anxieties around this intervention and the activities that are involved? I mean, what would you say to these parents?
Yeah, I think, we constantly look at journey and ensure that the balance of the experience and the risk and the environment is as balanced as it needs to be in order to achieve the goals that we want to achieve. So you could probably say it has been adjusted over the years to sort of because of that change. But I think we almost at a greater advantage because the need for for boys to be in an unknown environment is critical to the success of what we want to achieve out of Journey. If they were all too comfortable in that environment, it wouldn't have the impact that it has. So from a philosophical point, I want to say that it's not the worst thing in the world.
Yes.
And again, if I go back, we train the boys on what they do need to know. And so if they've got less experience, it's not the end of the world because they know what they need to know. And I think as parents, in terms of that anxiety and understand a parent's heart, understand a mom's heart, I want to say that they've got to definitely focus on the benefits and the outcomes of this event and not focus on where the risks could be and where their anxieties could lie, because it has proven itself.
Yes.
It wouldn't have been repeated 20 times if it was an event that didn't carry huge weight and huge benefit to our boys.
Yeah. What I would say to parents, perhaps as well, is talk to other parents whose sons have done Journey and talk to them about the effects it's had on those boys' lives. But I also think that Journey, I say this at the Journey departure ceremony every year, that Journey is not just an experience for boys, but it's an experience for parents as well. There's the struggle of letting go. Some boys perhaps have never been away from home for more than 5 days, and now they're off into the wilderness for 23. And so there's naturally in a parent's heart going to be some anxiety and separation anxiety in a sense. And what this does and why we do this journey is that ultimately when boys, complete their matrics here, they and then go off into the world, you're just delaying the inevitable. And so what we're wanting to do with parents is to partner with them in terms of allowing them to experience and learn about how to let go. As much as we love these young men we've brought into the world, we need to prepare them to be able to survive and thrive in a space without us in their presence. So we're coming to the end of this podcast, Malcolm, and perhaps you want to just mention a couple of key dates for parents that they can have a look or be on the lookout for as we move into the final term of the year.
Yeah, so we're starting the process of putting the groups together, which I think is probably a massive anxiety for the boys, and they just want to know which other of their buddies are in the group with them.
Will they have another friend? Is that guaranteed?
Yes, so that's guaranteed. They'll definitely be paired with at least 2 friends that they've chosen, and then that will be announced right at the end of term 2. There is some other things that'll sort of be happening, but then I think term 3 is when there's going to be a lot of Journey things taking place. We'll start training in the clubs and society sessions. I'll have an information evening with the parents early in term 3, where we'll cover the information that needs to be told about Journey and give an opportunity to ask questions and things like that. And then we build towards November. I think Group 1 will depart on the 2nd of November, and Group 7 will arrive home safely on the 30th of November. So it is definitely going to be a big and exciting term for the Form 3s, and I'm certainly looking forward to it myself.
Well, there's no doubt the school gears up for this. I mean, we ring the bell 4 times, or boys ring the bell 4 times in their career at St Albans. The first time when they arrive here as a new boy, and then they ring it twice in their Form 3 year when they depart on Journey, and then in a very emotional return to symbolise that they're home safely and to be reunited with their parents. And so in many ways, St Albans does this experience because it speaks, I suppose, to the very heart of our school, about developing young men, about allowing them to enter a space where they can learn a little bit more about themselves and to figure out who they want to become. And a lot of boys actually, say to me that, they're grateful that they have got rid of some bad habits and got into some good habits over this 3-week period. And so, we wish you all the best as you prepare for this, and we look forward to being out there with you and supporting you and making sure that this is another success. God bless.
Thank you.
And that wraps up another episode of Conversations with the Headmaster, featuring our head, Mr. Shane Kidwell. We'd love to hear from you, so send your thoughts and feedback to marketing@stalbanscollege.com. That's marketing@stalbanscollege.com. Don't forget to like, follow, share, and subscribe to stay updated on future episodes. Thanks for tuning in. We'll chat soon.